Yeah, so yesterday when we left off, I did take like a couple minutes just to kind of say what we wanted to do. So we were looking at how to do charts, but we're also working on the back end, where we did the SQL call to find this to kind of get like that price information so we could make that chart, but it's still not complete. So we need to go into Rails and finish this API call. Let me go ahead, open up iTerm. Go into our project. So I'm pretty sure I have a branch for this. I can list my branch by doing a get branch. This is going to list the branches I have. And maybe oh wait, I never made a branch for this because all we did yesterday was we just did this stuff in SQL Electron. So if you remember, SQL Electron. This was what we did. Connect here, connect to my real estate. We just came with a SQL call to grab back, city prices, which is just going to be a string separated by commas with all of our prices, and then the count. So we just need to go in and add this to our project. I'm not going to do this on a branch. I'm just going to do this on master. And then when we get to the front end, I'll do that on a branch. But this just to kind of speed this up a little. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a route and a method for this. So let's do a route. So maybe I could call this like a get, I don't know, city cost. Let's set up a get request to this, and this can go to, say this would make sense to go to my properties controller. And I can maybe like append this with properties, that route, but we can just do like this city cost. But that's going to go to my properties controller. And let's just have that go to a city cost method in there. So if I do a get API city cost, that's going to take me to my properties controller to this city cost method. So I can go to my properties controller. City cost and just to test this, let's just render JSON. All right. So I can start my server. Where's Chrome? Grab Chrome and just go to localhost 3001 API/city. So now I have that API call working. Or not working, but I have the route set up, but what we're going to do is we're going to make this a class method. So property dot, let's call a method called city cost. But I'm calling that now on my property model, which is going to, this method is going to be responsible for grabbing that data from the database. So I can now go to my property model, give a def self, because this is a class method, dot city cost. And I might even want to test this. Do I have that chain from like doing the get request that hits my controller? That should hit my model and then should return this string. Cool. So now just kind of slowly testing, getting myself there. Now I'm kind of ready to take the SQL we did from yesterday and run it in here. This is a little different because we're grabbing this. We did this from addresses. And I'm in my property model. Let's just see. So this is, it's kind of maybe expecting this to be from addresses, but maybe we can just switch this up a little. So select. Let's go ahead and copy this. From addresses. I might need to switch this up a little, or I could copy and do this in my address model, but let's keep it here and kind of just maybe see what's going to be a little different. So I'm going to do a dot joins. It's this one I'm going to switch up because I really want this to be from properties because that's the model I'm in right now. I'm in my property model. And I'm going to do inner join addresses, as AD, where the properties ID equals the AD. Just kind of have to like switch some of those up. I'm actually just going to go test this really quick. It's just like I just switched it, so I'm selecting. It's a minor change. I'm selecting from properties instead of addresses, just because I decided to do this in the property model. Kind of like a Rails thing. So now I can do my inner join and my dot where. Our properties dot sold is true. And then a dot group. Let's see. Comment that out because it'll cause a bug. Okay, now I have an error. Okay, I think it's right here. So I have this string aggregate. So I'm using a single quote here, but then I have a single quote there. So actually, Ruby is saying, hey, that's one string, and then now that's a comma. So I need this whole thing to be wrapped in like a double quote. So that was one bug right there. Where properties sold. Let's see here. Crap. Where is that error coming from? These errors are hard for me to spot. Let me just look it up. Group. What am I missing? I think it's like a group. Maybe you don't need the by there. That's just okay. Yeah, it was that by there. There's kind of like these weird things when we're grabbing it, when we're kind of massaging the SQL to the Rails methods. The dot joins dot where dot group. These are like Rails methods. So I don't need the group by because the group by is like included in that method. So it's kind of assuming group by. So we group by city. Cool. So there is our call. We do API city cost, and then we get back our data. Cool. So that's good. I can do a get add, get commit -m, and let me select this out. Commit -m. Cost backend. Let's just do a get push origin master. Okay. So that's now up on GitHub. Cool. So that would be done because we kind of skipped the QA spot on that and just pushed it up to master. So that would be considered done. We've kind of looked at charting, so that would be done. And then now we can work on this one, the sold price front end. And maybe I should really, that is what we're calling city cost right now. Cool. For this one, let's do another one of these where we kind of, fake or like pretend, even though it is working, let's pretend backend is not working. But we know our data, but we know API call, it's a get to API /city cost. And we know it's going to look something like this because, well, I just copied it, but we know it's going to like return an array of objects like this. JavaScript. I need new lines in here. So I know I'm going to like, if I do a get request to API city cost, I'm going to get back an array of objects that has a city key and a prices key, which is going to be a string of all the prices separated by a comma. And then what we're going to do is we'll pretend the backend's not working just to show, even if the backend's not working, we could get this like 99% done. So with something with this one, because this is going to be a little more of a challenging task, because we got to get the data, we got to set this up, but then we also have to do this new task of like creating a chart. And that's something we haven't done before. So this one I am going to spend just a second just kind of listing like some steps that we're going to want to do with this. Or like, and they might not like, maybe not in order. But here's some kind of things that like things I think we'd want to do. Or like, I'll just say this like sub tasks. So if I'm trying to take this city cost front end ticket into like subtask, I'm going to say things like this. I'm going to want to, and you can throw out things like, what kind of things do you think we want to do or need to do for this?
Stuff out a new page.
Yeah, I'd say there's like the React router stuff. Set up page. That's a good one. What other things? Like if you're trying to do this, like what things might you think you need to do or would want to do?
I mean, you can always just create some dummy data, see if you can get the graph working.
Yeah, dummy data. So I'm gonna do, I would break this up even to two steps, because since we're like new with charting library, like the charting library, yeah, let's just get like a chart working. Just with data that, as the chart. That's it. And then, yeah, I think. And then get the chart working with like how the data is going to be coming back. So this might be like, the normalized step. And like this one, I might even do in like code Sandbox. If that method was good for you. Like just get a working example. And yeah, maybe it's like the normalize, figure out normalize function. Get chart working in project, or stuff like, do API call to get data from database. I'm going to want to like normalize chart. So those are kind of some of like the tasks, not necessarily in order, but so let's go ahead and like start working on some of these. So I think one thing we could do just right off the bat is get the chart working with how the chart wants it to be. So, and let's save this. Let's just go to that recharts, because that's what we're going to be using. So this is where I'm going to go look at the examples, and I'm going to go try to find a chart that matches kind of what I want. That one's close. You know, this one's pretty close to what I want. I don't need I don't need two charts or two like lines. I just need one. But ooh, so there's, well, that one has all this gray stuff up above it. Don't need that. I kind of want like a combo of these two. So I think what I could do is with this one, maybe just try this in Code Sandbox and see, is there a way I can remove like the green, what right here, it's UV. Can I remove that from here? And it doesn't maybe look necessarily all that hard because they have like, look at how they're doing it. So they have their data. Looks like they have a name. When I hover over it, that's where I see the name, like page A, and then I see PV and UV. And then I'm a little confused what the amount, the AMT is, the amount. But maybe I can go in and just remove like the UV data and remove that bar right there. So this is why it's nice to have this like Code Sandbox. It's like, yeah, I don't care about, maybe I don't even care about this amount. We'll leave it there for now. But I'm going to go delete. And I don't need to have all of these. I just need like 3 of them. I don't just want to get this working. So there's 3. So now I have my 3 bars, but it's kind of like taking up this extra space. So let's see if I remove this one, this UV. Cool. There we go. Okay, I don't want that to say page A. Like I want that to be like a city. So it looks like this name. It looks like that's going to be, that could potentially be like my city. SLC Draper. I don't know, Sandy. I don't want that to say PV. I want that to say price. So maybe PV, I don't want to be PV. I want that to be price. Well, it looks like that just broke. My chart. Because if I get rid of PV now, I don't want that. I don't know what PV is. I want it to like be descriptive of what it is. So let's say it's price. So okay, the data key. Oh, the data key. Like, oh, that looks like that should probably be price. There we go. And then yeah, it looks like I can get rid of like those are all the same. And yeah, it looks like I really don't need this AMT, whatever that is. Were those all the same? Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that AMT is doing, but let's get rid of it for now because we're not, doesn't seem like it's doing anything. So I can, I'm essentially just coming in here and I'm just kind of like, this can be a nice thing about, you know, these code sandboxes. Because I honestly, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I could go look at the docs, but sometimes, you know, you can kind of just figure this out by going in and, you know, kind of playing around with it. But this is essentially probably, yeah, it's not going to be 24. It's probably going to be like $100,000. Let's make that one more zero. So it's 100,000. right? Can you see this is what I'm doing is just in Code Sandbox, I now kind of have a chart how I think, I think it should look like. This is pretty good. And so this is what I mean by this is how chart.js, or sorry, recharts is going to want the data. It looks like it wants an array of objects with name and price. Because that's what I pass to the bar chart as a data prop. I give it that array of objects. And it also looks like, so this x-axis, this data key, this needs to match. I mean, it happens to be name, like maybe I could, call this city. That might be a little more descriptive, city. So this data key needs to match that key, which is city. It's like, what happens if we get rid of the legend? I don't know, maybe I don't need the legend. I think with this, since I only have, well, I guess that's fine. I guess it just shows that's the price. The tooltip, like what does the tooltip do? That's probably like, if I don't want it to have that hover effect, I could get rid of the tooltip. If I want to change the color, that's how I change the color. Looks like there's a grid. It looks like I can maybe get rid of that grid. Yeah, do I want the grid or not? Looks like I can get rid of this little grid right here. I can almost change it to be more gritty. And yeah, the more the more you wanted to maybe investigate like what you could do, then you can go to the API and you can like look at, what are these things? Like what things can we add? But I think for now, this gives us an idea, like this is essentially what we want, right? I think that's good for now. So I've figured out how to do the chart. Cool. So now I can probably start working on this in, or I could even do this in Code Sandbox too. This might be, an interesting thing to try in Code Sandbox. So we know how we're going to get the data back. So I could go into Code Sandbox. And actually, let me Slack out this Code Sandbox so you have access to it. Let's just get back this data. So I can do like const API data. It's going to look something like this. It's going to be I don't want to do this below my import. I want to do this below my imports. Okay. So now inside of here, I could even try doing like this could be maybe a nice place to try to do like my normalized data function. Or like I could call it, I could call this API data to chart data. This takes my API data and it's going to convert it to the chart data. So this is going to expect like API data. And it's going to return some chart data. That's what this function is going to be doing. Let's just call this API data here and chart data here, so we don't overload these names. Does this make sense what I'm doing here? Here's my API data. That's how it's going to be. Now I want to convert it into this data because we're not going to get this data. I'm just going to delete that or comment it out. Like that's something we're not going to get. We need to create this data. So I want to go, and this is where there's not, I saw, you're not going to want to like copy and paste this code over. Like your normalized function, don't copy and paste over because these are always going to be different. This is where you need to just look at the two data sets and start writing the code out. So I want, and because it's always going to be different. There's never like, it's not going to be the same strategy. It just depends on how your data is coming back and how you want your data to look. So let's just kind of look at this specific case and maybe think about how we want to do this. Because this is how we're going to get back our, this is the data we get back from a get, API city cost, right? This is how it's going to look. And then this is the data format recharts needs. It's actually pretty close, right? This one's actually, I think this one's pretty straightforward. So would you be stuck? Like if I told you to do this, would you be stuck on this?
I would. I'm still trying to figure mine out from yesterday.
Yeah, probably.
So the question makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
I want to go from
Makes sense.
this to this.
Right.
So one thing you can do is try to like break this up. Once again, like try to make it a little more simple than like what we need to do. Like one way in this particular case that I think I could make this simple, not necessarily get it working. It's like, why don't I just go from this array of city, price, price count, and ID to an array of data that just has the city? Because that kind of gets me close, right? And that's actually already there. Like, I don't need to do anything really fancy. So what I mean by that is, so this, or actually, let's even start simpler, because I think this can be part of like the challenge is how do you even do like a console.log here? It's kind of like, how do I even get this started? Let's just kind of ignore returning that because that's fake. That's not, that's like going to be the end. Like, let's just log that I'm calling the function and log that I'm passing this data to this function, like, and kind of like, where do I need to put this? Well, my data is not defined. So what I'm going to do is this data, this function is going to take my API data and return the chart data. So this function is going to return that chart data. So I'll just do this right here. Call this function and pass it my API data. I don't, it's kind of giving me like this weird like TypeScript error. I can just return like an empty array right now. I'm expecting this eventually is going to return an array. But what I can do is I can like log, you know, these things. So I can like try running this. I just want to see this like here and then my API data. Sweet. I don't care that it's not working, but I'm logging that function and there it is. I could also do something like this. I could like uncomment out this data. Just to see this work, I could like return data. See this API data to chart, this needs to like, see how I like this is taking in my data, it's logging here, it's logging out, you know, the object as I'm getting it. And then it's returning the data as I want it. So that could be one way you can start working on this problem, is just getting this function set up. Like it's not doing anything. Like I need to like do the stuff here. But I've got this to a point where at least know it can take in the data, we can log it, and then it can return the data as we want it. And now I've got to the point, well, cool. Well, I don't want to just return data because this is hard coded. I actually need to do the work, but I've set it up to now where I can start, you know, doing stuff. So the first thing, let's just grab, so here's my array of objects. It has city, prices, and price count. Let's say I just want to create an array of objects that just has the city key. So I want to go through this array of objects and just return an array of objects of the same count that just has the city key. What method do I use?
Filter.
It's not. So remember,
Just a map.
It's
Map.
map because filter is
Yeah,
going
that's
to
right.
remove. And yeah, this one, it's like they're always going to be different. But if when you really think at like the high level, what filter is doing and what map is doing, like if I look at this API data, I'm getting back this unique data by city. So I'm going to want to have like the same amount as cities. I just want to change how it looks. So that's map. If I were going to remove some of these, that would be filter.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And you know, I'm just going to call this chart data here, or let's just call this X for now. But now I can do my API data here dot map. I'm going to go through each, I don't know what to call this, city price info or something, data or something like that. And I'm going to return. I'm going to run a return like this, the city. I'm going to return an object that, and then that's going to have the name of the city. So that's going to be city price dot city. Then I can console dot log X. We're getting our logs a little messy, so let's just that there. So if I look at that, okay, so now I have my objects that just have the city key. Well, what else do I need in this? I need a price 0. Let's just do like 100,000. Let's just hard code the price. Why doesn't like this? Oh, it's giving me like some TypeScript stuff. See, now I'm mapping over them. They have a city and then they have a price, which is just hard coded. Well, isn't that that's how I want my chart data to look, right? So let's just return. Now we can start returning the chart data. Let's just log chart data here. Or sorry, I'm going to call this chart data. I call it chart data here. Cool. See how it's just these like small steps of slowly just getting it closer to working. And I might cheat at times, like I'm cheating right here because I'm hard coding the price. But now I'm going through my API data, I'm mapping over it, I'm taking the city, and I'm just hard coding the price. But now I have that working, and now it's all hooked up. Now there's just one thing I need to do in here. Instead of hard coding the price, I need to find the average price from each, city price. Now that becomes its own little thing. So this is what the city price looks like. It's going to be one of these objects. So now, like, I have an object. Now I can even break this up further. I'll just do this like kind of down here. I have an object that looks like this. I want to return the average price. So I could even break that up further. Okay, let's say I have a string that looks like this. I want to get the average price. So now we don't even need to think about the chart. We don't need to think about any of this. If I'm just looking just right at this, how do we do this? Or what do you think we need? Like, what are maybe some steps to do this? Like, you tell me. And if you don't know, like, what could you maybe Google? Or just tell me, like, if you're just human.
You have to figure out how to take all the strings and probably turn them into numbers, right? And then figure out how to get the average of all of them.
Yeah, well, this is just one string.
Okay.
So first of all, let's just like in English, how do I find the average? Like, we don't, as humans, we don't care this is a string. Like, what would you do to find the average?
What do? Do you add them all up and then divide by how many there are?
Yeah, so that's add all up and divide by how many there are. Like, maybe it's been a while since you've done stats and you don't remember how to do the average. So it's like, that would be something you could Google. Like, how do I find the average of, 5 numbers. But yeah, we know, like I think most of us know, we add these all up and divide by how many there are. So you actually do some math in coding. Okay. Right, so I do this plus this plus this plus this plus this divided by 5. And that would give me my average.
Yeah, but those are strings right now, not numbers.
It's not strings. It's
Sorry, it's a
one
string right now. It's
one
not.
string. So, and we saw this yesterday. I said there was like these 2 split and joins. So this is why you need to be doing brain teasers. Like if you're doing brain teasers and I asked you, how do you would know how to do this, because this type of thing would come up often. It's like I have a string of characters separated by a common like delimiter. This comes up all the time. And there's a method on strings called split. This is a very, or you might not remember it, but you might know, oh, I know there's a way to like convert a string to an array. And you can do that by giving it something to like split on. So if I were to go into, like, let's say I have like a string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can call the split on it. And then, so the one thing that's, they're separated by commas. So now I can get an array of strings. Why do I want to go from a string to what's useful about going to an array?
An average in array. You can do the average on the array because then it's numbers and I'm going to show strings.
I mean,
Now
there's,
use the accumulator, the reduce.
yeah, well, I can iterate over an array. I can go through each thing and I can do something. So yeah, I can go through. So once I convert this to an array, then I could use like a for each loop, or I could use a reduce loop, and I could find like, then I can go add up all the things. So yeah, I could do something like this, and maybe I can just start doing this in here. So I could do like my let, just create a variable called prices. That's going to be equal to my city price dot prices dot split. And we can split on a comma. And then I could do like a console.log prices. Just kind of go step by step. See, there's my array. So it looks like, those are separate, like there's a space in between. Well, it looks like my prices I can split by a comma and then a space. Cool. Now I can do like, let's do my prices. Let's do this with the reduce, because this is going to be a good use case for reduce. So reduce is a way, this is like I can have this thing I'm keeping track of, like this value, this accumulator, and then I can go through each thing. So the reduce takes a function who I'm going to have access to this accumulator, which is going to be the return value of this function. So I can start accumulating this value. And then the thing is going to be the current item in the array I'm iterating over. So this would be like really the price. So I could return accumulator plus price. And then let's store this to a variable. Like this is going to be like the sum, because that's what I'm trying to figure out here is the sum. I'm getting an error. Something is, wow, really wrong. Let's give this a default value 0. Why doesn't it like this? Oh, well, that's not spelled right. Wow, what does my accumulator look like?
We could just put all those numbers together.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Yeah, it didn't add them. It just kind of like globbed all of the,
Yeah, this this is a
all the,
little.
all the strings together.
I think some people were kind of saying this. So when I log I split my array. Now I have an array of what?
Strings.
An array of strings.
What happens when I'm add strings together?
It just concatenates them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it concatenates. So what I need to do is, because then that's another thing. Well, how do I, and these can all be things you don't have to memorize. It's like, what's the question you need? It's more about asking the right question. So
How do you convert an array of strings to an array of numbers?
Yeah, and it could even, convert an array of strings to an array of numbers, but I would say it's even simpler at how to convert a string to a number. And then once I know how to convert a string to a number, then I can figure out how to do that. But yeah. And the way, if you were to Google it, it's going to be parse int. So if I do parse int and then I pass it a string, it will give me back a number. So parse int 234, plus the number 2, that's 236.
So can you parse in price?
Yeah, so I need to parse int price. What was that word that we saw with SQL yesterday where we were actually taking a number, converting it into a string? Started with a C. Casting. So here we could say this here. I mean, the function's called parse int, but we're converting a string to a number. So this is like casting. We're going from one type to another. So now when I log my prices, or when I log my sum, that looks more like it, right? That looks like I don't know, what is that like? 500,000, or is that 5 million? 5 million. And if I roughly look at this, that looks right-ish, doesn't it? For Draper, like 5 million. So now I have my sum. If I wanted to find out the average, so the average would just be my sum divided by, well, I actually have this price count in here. Or I could just do my prices dot length. I have two ways to get the length of that array. So I could just do city dot price count. And there we go. That's coming out to be like 1 million. I could kind of look at that for Draper. Yeah, that looks about right. I could do the math, but I think, that looks right. And yeah, maybe I don't care about those decimals, so I could like math.floor. Not capital A, math.floor.
I have a question. I know it's a little bit further than what we're talking about, but is there a way to do a chart that has the the bars on both sides, like one bar going up and one bar going down. Like reverse.
I saw an example on like the page that he was on, the rechart page.
Yeah, I thought I saw that too. I don't know if I know exactly what you're.
Yeah,
like
that. Yeah. Okay. Because I was thinking that would be handy for like if you happen to do the golf one for par and stuff. So I was curious if it was possible.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's yeah. If you that's where it's like if you want to start getting a little more specific, that's where you need to go like kind of go inspect the charting library. It's all possible. I mean, you saw some of the stuff you can do like
Yeah.
D3, but it's more is how hard is it going to be? But if you
Right.
can come in here and like a working example, like this is going to be pretty straightforward to do that.
Right. Okay.
Cool. So yeah, so what I like, so I'm logging the average. So I'm just gonna like store this to a variable, but like I've kind of like figured out the average right here. So I could say like let average equal that. Kind of get rid of these logs. And now instead of hard coding the price, I can now use that average. And there we go. So yeah, I mean that like, so to me, when I looked like this one looked like this one was definitely like this one was an easier brain teaser, but we still, I think even going through this, there's probably like, potentially like 10, I didn't really count, but maybe up to like 10 little individual steps of going from this to this. And even setting up, how do we even like call this data? Like how do we get this to work? Like how do we even just set it up so we're passing it the data? So it's, in a way, it's like simple to go from this to this, but then it's also challenging because it is like we need to set this up, get it to work. And then it might also be like we're not still quite done because now we're actually going to have to actually hook this up to like an API call. So we might have to like change it even more. But what I have done is I now have this function. I have this function that takes in the data as we're going to get it back from the API and returns how we want it for the chart. So I might need to do this call somewhere else, maybe once I get it set up. But, this was like, this is, I think, the hard part of it. And then we also did another hard part, which actually wasn't too hard, of just getting the bar chart working. Cool. So yeah, now I don't need that dummy data right there because we're not using that anymore. I don't know. Have you been using Code Sandbox, or have you just been trying to do it in your React project?
I normally just do it in the React project because
Yeah.
I honestly forget about the Sandbox stuff.
Too.
Yeah, Code Sandbox. There's also stuff like I don't know, Repel IT, Replit. There's other like these sites. It's kind of like, I mean, you could just do this in a JavaScript file in like VS Code, but these sometimes can be nice because you can just go in here and start typing some JavaScript. So it's just like a little JavaScript shell. So if you have like, like this is like this is, you kind of just don't even want to worry about chart stuff. You don't want to worry about React. You could just take this data, and you could do this in a JavaScript file just on VS Code. Like, okay, I want to write a function, and I'm just going to kind of like copy this stuff. Like I could have done this all in here. So I could, do my dummy data, have some dummy data. And I could, write my function. And then I could, test. So sometimes, getting this out of like the mindset of like this is in React and like all of the moving pieces, just taking a section of like a particular problem, isolating it and figuring it out outside of everything else, I think can be useful. Where are all my console.logs coming from? I just want to let, and then you can come and log these results.
I just I get what you're saying about like putting it out in steps and all that, but it's so, last night, for instance, my brain was so fried by the end of it because I couldn't even like fathom or figure out what I actually needed to like get back. And then once I get it back, like how did I display it? So it's just, this is all this normalizing stuff is tough to wrap my head around.
Yeah, it's a lot of this, because yeah, I would say like the like, and this can be hard, like, but I would say almost like the most important part of this is to understand what you need to do. Like I need to go from this array of data to this array of data. If you don't understand that, then it's like how can you understand a problem or how can you solve a problem if you don't understand it? And this is not always straightforward. Is that kind of what you're saying? You're maybe
Yeah,
struggling.
So with the trying to, I'm trying to do, I think we decided to try to do our project a little differently. So it's just a matter of figuring out the data, like it's exactly what you just said. It was like I don't know what I need to get back, so how can I know like what to do?
Yeah. So one way, it's challenging because it's like there's a couple things. So one thing that with this that could maybe, where you can maybe start like knowing what you need, like since we're using a third-party library, like recharts. Let's just go to their example. Or like the way, like if I wanted a chart that looks like this, how they have their data, because like they have a bar chart, here's a data prop, and they're giving it this array. Like if I want the data, if I want it to look like this, I need my data to look like how they have it. So that's kind of like, that's something like can't really change. I mean, we changed this a little where like we did like, I could call that city and price. We came in here and we changed those things. I don't know if this is. That kind of breaks it though, because then like I need to change these keys. So what I'm saying is like by figuring out how like rechart needs the data, then that can maybe give you some direction. Because maybe you figure out, oh, rechart wants the data like this. Okay, let's just go make a database call that sends this back exactly like this. Or, but in this case, we here's but like we're kind of pretending like, okay, rechart wants it one way. The people from our back end are giving it back one way. So like now as a front end developer, it's our job to make those to bridge the gap.
Yeah, so I guess I don't understand how, I guess when I render a table, like based on yesterday's project or yesterday's component that we worked on, I guess I don't understand like what the table needs.
Yeah. So, and for that, like, let's just say I was like using ant design and I was using an ant design table. They're going to dictate like what they need. Okay, here's my data source. Okay, it's an array of objects with key, name, age, address. Then it looks like I give them columns, title. It kind of looks like the columns, like it's matching. That one's for name. This one's for age. That one's for address. And so it's more like looking, you're kind of at their mercy because you're using their library.
Right.
So it's like you're kind of so I would say that could be like the first part is like you figure out how they, by they I mean like the component library or the library, how it's going to want it. And then you might look back at how your backend is giving it back, and then you mix and match, or you normalize. So yeah, this is definitely where like in your portfolio project, like this is where you can like the copy and pasting from like lecture notes is not going to be a good strategy. It's and then like the
Not like,
portfolio.
I know that you saw me do that yesterday, and it's not like I do that and I expect it to work, but it's just like sometimes I just need some sort of foundation,
Yeah.
No,
I totally get it. And I get that. And this is why like I do really recommend like going to Code Sandbox and just, especially when you're doing like, like something like a table. Don't worry about your code. Don't worry about your data. Don't worry about your code. Just go kind of figure out how to just build a table in ant design. And then you can kind of come in, well, maybe I don't want name and age. Maybe I want like, instead of that to be age, I want that to be, I don't know, like gender. And then it's like, well, how would I change that? And then you might need to go like spend some time on the docs, like go ant design, go see. You might need to like spend 30 minutes like seeing how it works, or you can maybe almost guess sometimes. Like I honestly like I don't know. Like, so if I
building the table like like how to structure a table is fine. It's just like passing the information that you want to put in the table from your back end to your front end through like a normalizing. data function. That's where I'm still like trying to figure out how to basically.
Yeah,
have it do that.
but you were saying like, you were struggling with. Where
No,
did
I
my-
can get a table to show up. That's not.
No, you were saying you were struggling with going from like, I need to go from this data to this data, like just understanding, not knowing, I'm not even talking about knowing how to do it. I'm just saying knowing how to describe what you need to do. Does that, because
Yeah.
that's the first part. It's like, it's almost like knowing what you're getting and where you need to go
Yeah.
and just being able to describe that.
Or like if I'm not getting what I want, like how to get it.
Yeah.
Like I have a custom route or I have a custom method in my backend and it's all set up. And I can like pull it through to the front end, but it's like how to, I guess, like sort through it and put it all in the right place.
And that's like the challenge of coding. Like, I think coding is like, you take these complicated pieces and you break them up. And then like the broken up pieces are like, it's like they're pretty simple, but then it is like, it's like it's like connecting the dots. And it's like describing what you want to do and breaking it up. That's like the challenge. But this is why I'm just like, I keep on, like, I don't really see people do it too often, but go into Code Sandbox, be stepping into your Rails console, be stepping into just like a plain JavaScript file where it's just like, man, I have a string and I just want to find the average. Like, just take this smaller problem and like do it here, like, and then that's a function, find average. String. This is like string dot split. On a comma, dot reduce. And then you do all that stuff here. And it's like, okay, I now know how to take a string of numbers separated by commas and sum them up. In my mind, like it's, especially as you're kind of like starting to learn this kind of stuff, it's easier to do this right here than as I was doing it like inside of like this, where there's like a chart going on and there's like use effect. That's just like a strategy I like to use a lot. It's just,
I understand that. Yeah.
cool. Okay. And because this is like what we like this, doing this in Code Sandbox. Now it's like, I know how I'm getting my data from my database. I know how to convert that and I know how to make a chart. Cool. Now I can actually go into my code, into my project and make that work. And then I also have like this nice little Code Sandbox that, maybe I can like have as a reference for the future. I could like throw that, in my documentation. Like I now have this nice little reference of how to do that little feature. Cool. But now let's go in back and let's start doing some of this like actual project stuff. So let's go set up let's go set up a page for this in React Router, or sorry, yeah, in our project. So let's get this running. I'm going to cd into client, run yarn, start. Actually, before I run yarn, start. So now I want to get this working, but this is a new third-party library, so I actually need to install this. So let's do, if you see npm install, you can just switch that with yarn add. And it's always just going to usually be the name of whatever like the project's called. So yarn add recharts. don't think, we don't need to do any of this because we're just going to install it with recharts. So I think that's all we need to do. Yarn add recharts. Start. Now this would be something like if I was working with a team, I'd be like, hey, I just added recharts. So next time, you know, when I push this up and clone down, run yarn. So they can install that package. Can start up my server. I don't know if I opened this up in code or not. Okay, I did. All right. So yeah, let's just go ahead and add this to our components. I'll just add this to the pages. Just call it city cost.js. I don't know. I do have this working. This working code. I could almost just like, this is working. Could almost just call, well, actually, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm going to do that really quick. Let's just set up this path first. Actually, I almost feel like this actually would be, I'm going back and forth. Let's just be safe. So there's my city cost page. We'll just get this set up and then we can copy and paste that stuff in. So you can do my nav bar. Add a link. City cost. Add that to my app.js. Path, city, and then give it the component. Okay, that's not quite right. Or if I click city cost, that takes me to the find home page. So I think that's in my nav bar. Need to switch that to city cost. Okay, so now I have that work. Like I just have it set up in React and React routers. So now I can take this and go ahead and copy and paste it into the city cost. I don't need the styles. I'm going to call this city cost. And it looks like they're exporting default this right up here. So I think that should work. Cool. So I go find there and there. Now that's working. So now I can start trying to figure out how to do this with actual like an API call. So I might need to change some stuff. Like I know this is my function to convert data. So I had that working. Well, now I just need to kind of do like my use effect. And we'll say now the database is working. But you can see we got like a lot of this done, right? Like even if our database wasn't working, this was still like a significant amount of work. But let's say our database is working, so we don't have to like do anything too fancy. So let's do get city cost data. I don't know what to call that. So here's my function async. Let's just try to like don't get ahead of ourselves, and let's just try to like either log or like let's JSON stringify the response. So or let's just log it. I guess that's simple enough. Let's just log it. So let's do our API / city cost. Oh wait, I don't want to do an axios.get. Catch. Alert error. All right, I have a syntax error right here. And then we'll do a console.log res. And then let's put a more clear message, res. And let's do res.data, because that's what it's going to come back as. Cool. Res.data. Okay, so there's my actual data from my API. So now I need to figure out, and this can, yeah, now I need to figure out how to get this working with the actual API call. So I kind of now need to think about how to do this. So I'm using this API data that is hard coded right here. So one thing I could just do, just to like break it, is just to comment this out, because I don't want to like actually use that. Okay, cool. So now I get an error. Like API data is not defined. Okay, well, let's define it now. Because now what this is, instead of using this hard-coded data, I actually have to go up to an API and get it. So that's probably going to maybe be a sign I need some state. So let's define it, API data. And then set API data. Let's use state, an empty array. Need to import use state. It's not auto importing use state. All right. So I have this API data. Where do I want to, or how do I now set this? Or where do I want to set this?
With your Axios call.
Yeah, so I do my Axios call. I get data. Now I want to convert data. Let's just do converted data equals. Remember, this is the function that can take that API data and convert it. See, that does it. Converted data is not defined. Let's do a let. Let's go look at my log. I'm going to clear this just because. So there's my converted data. And there it is, city price, etc. And then I can do set API data to this converted data. And now I'm not going to do this function call anymore. That was just something how I set it up to get it working with how it was. Now I can go ahead and use this API data right here. Let's refresh. And there, now it's working. Now, as I go through this, I'm like, wait, this actually really isn't the, like, as I'm using this really isn't the API data. I think more semantically correct. This is really the chart data. You know, as I was writing it, I kind of thought it was the API data, but actually, no, this is the chart data. I'm going to rename it just because it makes it's more readable. So now when I read this, it's like, okay, so when my page loads, I get the city cost data. Okay, in this function, I get the response from that call. I convert that data, and then I set my chart data to that converted data. Call this converted chart data. Or I could just do this all in one step. Sometimes it can be nice to throw these in separate variables because then I can log it. So I'm going to do it like that. Although I'll comment out that log because we don't need it anymore. So in this get city cost, I get my response, I convert it, and then I set the chart data to that converted chart data. And then that will use that here. What happens if I want this initial state to be null? Maybe for some reason I want this to be null. What is this going to do? How's that working? Oh, I guess it seems like, can this handle null? Okay. I guess I thought I was going to break it, but it looks like this bar chart can handle a null value. So maybe I don't want to render this chart though if it's null. So I could do something like if, if we don't have chart data, I can come up with a different statement like return. So if there was an error, let's refresh this, it would say like, oh, there's no chart data. And when it tried to render that. Let me select out this component. So yeah, what? And then also I'll just push this up to GitHub because I think this is a good little working spot. All right. Yeah. So how how are you all feeling about this?
I think it makes sense when you do it. I just find it hard when I'm on my own to make it work. But when I watch you, I'm like, yes, that seems perfectly logical.
I get the process. I get how it all should happen. It just like by myself doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm the same way.
for sure. And that I think that's just more that I feel the same too. It's like when I watch people, like when I'm learning something new and I'm watching someone, I'm like, this makes sense. And then I go try to do it. It's like, nope. So it's
Yeah,
just
I don't know. Sorry.
Oh,
I've
go ahead.
always said to myself that we're still like brand new at this. Like we can't be expected to just be able to sit down and do it. I think it was time and practice and it'll get easier.
Yeah. And yeah, you start, like I said, I really think like one of like the thing I really started to learn how to do well was like to break stuff up. That's like really the only way I can do this, because it just gets hard. Definitely breaking stuff up has its own little problems, because then you have to like, it's like putting things together. But yeah, but when you go like try it on your own and you kind of like hit a wall, I think you start to see some of like the holes and like where you're misunderstanding things. So when you then go look at like, you rewatch the videos, or you're going to look at like other articles or other tutorials, like when you struggle on something and then you hear it again, it just like it sinks in so much more. So some of the stuff, it's like you have to like learn like 3 or 4 times. But and this particular project, this one is like it. I think I'm assuming, I would say you're probably all surprised by how much work this was, right? Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like when we first looked at this, it was like, oh, this shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
So, like, I mean, like this chart, it's like, this looks pretty basic. And it's like, oh no, that's quite a bit of stuff. But it's like, once we know this now, then it's not going to be harder to make like, a more like cool, like admin level UI. Like, let's do like admin interface. Just kind of look at some of these. Like it's kind of like, since we now know how to do like a bar chart, like, we could do a little stuff to make this maybe look a little better. But then like, once we know how to do that, you can maybe start to see, and how to do a table. It's not so far like to go from like this project to something, that, starts to become like, pretty meaningful. And then you can like, you just do all these API calls, and then you manipulate the data, and you can create these like pretty cool user interfaces. More with a lot of well-displayed information. It's just like doing these API calls, getting the data, making them match how your UI wants them, doing the click stuff. So yeah, like we're pretty close to building out something like this with like this app we just did. Like we're kind of getting all of the pieces to do something like that. So let's take a little break. When we get back, I want to talk just briefly just about pagination, just so you know what it is, and we'll do it a little. I don't think we'll have time to do infinite scroll. Maybe I'll have like Michael do a review on that, or maybe we'll do it later, like next week or something. But let's take a break. let's come back at, let's call it 12:30. And then we'll spend like the rest half hour just kind of looking at some stuff with pagination.